you can take a third of the payrolls of Scottish companies, and within 10 years, a third of that payroll will be stuff that's being done by people who are not full-time.
Basically, I, both through Gig's LinkedIn page and through my own, we just reached out to the people who, we're connected with, who were following, and just asked if they had any questions. Obviously, you're very well known in the kind of freelancing economy type network, just because of, the stuff you've done before and that kind of thing. So we basically just asked if anybody had anything that they wanted to know, and we've got a couple of questions. One of the big ones that both I'm interested in as well is what would be your kind of like ultimate definition of future of work? Because obviously a lot of people probably aren't as clued up as the likes of yourself and other people. So what would be your kind of baseline definition and of how to describe it?
Sure. I mean, I think that it's the shift from traditional notions of career and organization to more innovative and flexible forms.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Did you write, Harvey, I got to ask, did you write, now that you've recorded that, would you just send it to me, just that line? Because I probably will forget it, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, don't worry about it.
Keep asking.
One of the other ones we've had, obviously LinkedIn, kind of quite recently, I've talked about them trying to start up a sort of freelance platform that's integrated with the thing. Do you have any kind of thoughts on how you think that will run? How do you think it would kind of play out?
I was part of a debate about that, and I don't know. So we know that LinkedIn is good as a social network.
Yep. No, definitely.
But we don't know that it's been particularly successful in its other business ventures. For example, LinkedIn was trying to offer a lot of education on a paid basis. I don't think it's sort of done particularly well.
No, I know you don't see much.
Yeah, it's certainly been focused on full-time recruiting as opposed to freelance recruiting, and it hasn't done particularly well. So my sense is, unless I'm missing a thing, and you may, Harvey, know more than I do, but my sense is that it's been very, very effective as a social network that brings together people on topics of interest. But I don't know that they've figured out the way to do more than that.
Yeah, no, I mean, even with the LinkedIn job ad thing that they run, where you can post like recruiting posts and stuff, it's more just, it seems to more just be a kind of case of like an initial kind of conversation starter to then put it onto a different platform to then kind of continue, Cool. So one of the other questions that we've got is, obviously you yourself have kind of worked with different talent platforms across, multiple different countries and areas and stuff. Out of all the ones that you've seen over the last couple of years, do you have any kind of favorites that are obviously doing it in the best way possible? Obviously, we've talked about things like Top Talent and Upwork and Fiverr and that kind of thing, but they're on a very big scale,
I do have favorites, but they're not favorites as companies. They're favorites as examples of a bit. So an example would be, I sort of think I've got these categories in my head. So one category would be, what are companies that do a great job of community building? And for me, those are companies like TopTal is one, Contra is another, Venture L is another, Hawksby in the UK is another, etc. So there are a bunch of those. And Harvey, when you guys decide you want to dig deep in any of these areas, we can catch up and I'll suggest where to look. Another area that I look at is the kinds of platforms that seem to give people the most opportunity. And what we know is that they tend to be more focused than broad. They tend to be more mid-sized than huge or tiny, etc. Third is companies that really need tech versus the ones that think they need tech, but they really don't. So there's a wonderful example of a person that's trying to make a decision about whether to bring on a CTO. And I said, how many people are on your platform? And she said, 150. And I said, how many people are likely to be on your platform in 5 years? And she said, maybe 200. And I said, I don't know why you'd need a CTO. I think you need a file program, but that's about all I can think.
Yep.
It's et cetera. So my advice is to take it in the direction of kind of what is the area that you want to know about.
Yeah.
And then we can talk more specifically about it. I don't know if that helps.
No, it's a good point. I think there's definitely a lot of trying to do a bit of everything, especially with kind of especially with kind of startups that are obviously coming into doing the whole kind of freelance gig targeting thing. They try to do every little bit all in the one thing, you know.
The craziest part is the notion of bigger is better, because it's not.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Because
it's kind of like there's this sort of nonsense. And what happens is you end up, excuse me for saying this because it'll sound rough, and I hope people aren't insulted by it. There are a lot of writing platforms out there because there are a lot of good writers out there.
Yep.
The problem is that the writing is changing. And so more and more of the stuff that people used to do and make a living on is now being done by AI. I mean, we now have non-human authors. So having more and more people on a platform that kind of aren't differentiated is not helpful. Having 50,000 writers on your platform, all that does is drive the value down. That's the message. Yeah. Anyway, next question.
Next question, Brian. So obviously in regards to places like America, the freelance market in itself isn't as big as other places, but you know, you've worked with quite a few kind of baseline freelance companies in the UK. Do you have what's your kind of general thoughts on the way that the UK freelance market is going at the moment, and obviously where it will kind of continue to go over the next couple of years?
Sure. It's my understanding that in the UK generally, the origin of freelance was different than it was in the States. In the States, the origin of freelancing was tech.
Yep.
In the UK, the origin of freelancing was agency work. It was the idea that agencies were charging a subscription fee or a price on top of the work that was 30 to 50%, and that it just didn't make sense. And so you ended up with places like, Juno and others disrupting. What I think is true in general is that you can take a third of the payrolls of Scottish companies, and within 10 years, a third of that payroll will be stuff that's being done by people who are not full-time. So I would say that's the way to start to think about it. In terms of the value of this thing, it's not that the value of this thing is X minus US. It's that if the GDP of Scotland is X and the total payroll of small, medium, and large companies is Y, take 30 to 35% of that, and that will likely be what's provided by freelancers. It doesn't mean that the employees went away, but it means that more and more of that work will be project-based and contracted rather than people as full-time folks.